Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of AVD Monthly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got a couple people on with me. Moen Khan is the global CTO of XenTegra, based up in Toronto, Canada. Moen, I have to ask, it's 98 degrees here in Charlotte, North Carolina today. What's the weather? What's the temperature in Toronto?
We have a beautiful 23 degrees Celsius. In Fahrenheit, it will be around 70.
Oh, man. So you guys take a pounding during the winter, but does it get hot there?
Yeah, it does get hot, but not too bad.
Okay. Yeah. Pandemic hit. I haven't been up there since that. I got to start getting up there summertime at the very least. Man, I cannot believe I don't have a schedule. Well, enjoy that. The rest of us will be sitting here baking, at least in the South. Greg, where are you located?
I'm out of Dallas. It's the old saying, it's hot. It's dang hot down here. It's 100 right now with a high humidity.
So Greg Roberson is with Nerdio, and if you don't know, Nerdio is the company that takes what Microsoft does with AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, and takes it to the next level. Greg, what's your role for our listeners there?
So at Nerdio, I'm the enterprise sales engineer, covering a number of territories and helping the sales organization explain kind of the technical side, running the customers through proof of concepts and educating them on the use of the platform.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you. You guys know a lot about AVD and what it does great and what it needs a little help with, and that's where Nerdio kicks in. Moen, I know you've got some background running Nerdio in conjunction with Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop. Give us a little insight into what your team's done with it.
So we did initially when AVD came out. One of our we were the first partner who did some large rollout for a financial institute and a pension firm. Both of them, they were running Horizon. One was running Horizon, and the second one was running RDP, but they were not seeing benefit. When WVD or AVD, previously WVD, when it released right before pandemic, we did a POC. Customer loved it. And since then, we have not stopped doing these and seeing how WVD or AVD has matured over time. Some of the gaps that we saw, image management, auto scaling, and all those things, Nerdio came in and filled up all those gaps. What we have done now is taken it a step further. Not only a product, but building a solution around it. So we, as a Agile partner who can do maintain and manage Agile very well, we just took Agile, who is not doing a MSP at this time. We kind of build a solution that is wrapped around AVD with Nerdio on running a UMS on top of that, and building a MSP solution, which does not exist, but we were able to get the same functionality and features, just combining all these three technologies together.
So basically, Moen, you guys are taking AVD, which is a best of breed platform, using Nerdio to make it more capable and more manageable, and then turning around and connecting to that through a managed thin client Linux environment. So you're basically getting the best of all the stack end to end.
Absolutely. Completing the story, basically, you have, you need a place where you want to run your virtualization. You need to have an endpoint, how you are connecting. So bringing all three together, I feel that's the picture, and that's the solution that customers, they want to see, they want to get there, but they're not able to, because either they don't understand, and the confusion with the AVD, and I'm not sure if it is done intentionally, but it is confusing. I just got off a call talking to one of the customer who's running 1,600 users, and they are treated as a partner and customer both. They were scratching their head that we don't understand. And that's when bringing Nerdio and AVD together, that's when they say, okay, now we understand how it completes the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Greg, I bet you guys see a lot of customers that buy into or commit or go down the AVD route and find out pretty quick that there's a few features that are less than developed and some are just missing altogether.
We do quite often, and we continue to add new features and capabilities to fill those holes.
Well, that's really the topic of this podcast, is to hopefully once a month jump on and talk about what Microsoft's done to evolve the product. I use the term Microsoft's in it to win it. They want as many workloads, especially desktop workloads, running in Azure as possible. However, just like with the rest of the Microsoft story, they need partners like Nerdio, like XenTegra to bring solutions further to market so that what Microsoft doesn't have time to fill in all the holes or do it the best possible way, partners like us can help them with. And at the end of the day, they accomplish their goal of getting workloads running in Azure. I was trying to explain to one of our new employees a while ago that there used to be a history of Microsoft wanting all the workloads to run on every device, whether it was a server or whether it was the endpoint. I think they're to a point now where they'll give up on the endpoint if it means it's going to go in their cloud, and they've got a long-term play to create a subscription and consumption model that benefits them in their story. So let's jump in and look at what Microsoft announced in April of 2022. The first one that I have here on the screen here, Greg, is Intune device configuration for Windows multi-session, now generally available. I guess for our listeners, we should probably point out that there is only one place in the world where you can run Windows clients with multiple sessions, and that is Microsoft Azure. Correct. I will tell you that I worked at Microsoft on a support desk when XP Service Pack 2 came out, and it briefly had multi-session in it. And when it disappeared before the release candidate, the actual final release candidate, I was like, man, where'd that go? Well, I think we found it.
Yes. The addition of Intune for multi-session, at least for our customer base, is going to be a boondoggle. It's a great thing to really see that piece come in, because until the support for multi-session, it pushed a lot of customers to individual personal VMs within AVD. So this will be really welcomed by the community. My suspicion is because it allows our customers and AVD customers worldwide to better configure their footprint from a cost perspective.
Is that for the gold image, or is that for those persistent images, or both?
So with Intune, either or. With Intune, the ability to update applications on a deployed host previously had to be done on the image. Yeah. Now that it supports the individual session, multi-session, you can point it directly to the end host and update those now.
So let me make a statement here, and you correct me where I'm wrong. This is what SMS turned into SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager, turned into Intune. And now Intune is that image management portion of the Windows Endpoint Manager greater story. Is that an accurate way to portray that?
To an extent, yeah. It's not necessarily going to, quote, manage the image, but rather the deployed VM. But outside of that, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Mo, and any comments on Intune becoming more and more of the story here, specifically in a case where now it can manage that multi-session world?
Yeah, definitely. I think that has been the path that Microsoft was trying to get to, and I'm talking about 9-10 years ago when Intune first came out. The vision was that Intune is going to replace SCCM. SCCM had tons of potential. Intune was more of just something that can manage mobile device. But the goal was that it is going to replace SCCM at one point. And I feel that this one piece with multi-session, that is the game changer, in my opinion. For many of our customers, having Intune manage that multiple session is multi-session for Windows 10 or Windows 11 It is really great move.
And Intune is 100% an online service. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, honestly, I think the light bulbs just went on for me. SCCM, the online or the service option of that is Microsoft Intune. I guess I kind of knew that, but I just don't live in that world enough to where it totally made sense until just now.
Yeah, at one point, SCCM was on-prem and Intune was cloud. And at the way they made, the way Microsoft made this integration was that you don't have to go to online service to maintain Intune. You can manage Intune from your SCCM console. But then direction or mandate was within Microsoft that this is going to reverse in some time. And that's what I'm seeing, that now instead of SCCM managing your Intune or giving you that management capabilities from a single pane of glass, now all those things is moving to Intune, where you will be some point you will be managing SCCM from Intune until it is fully eradicated or they have decommissioned SCCM, which at one point will happen.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the next topic on here from April is scheduled agent updates public preview. Greg, you want to tell us what that means?
Thank goodness for that coming, to be honest with you. So, prior to the release of the scheduled agent updates, when a host got deployed and the RDP agent was installed and configured, right after it joined the host pool, it would automatically go through and start trying to do an update. And there wasn't really a way to determine when the individual hosts were going to reach out and update itself. And so consequently, Nerdio put in a stopgap measure to delay putting host and host pools to help accommodate for that upgrade process. Now, with the new scheduled update public preview, it's a host pool option within AVD, allowing you to set effectively two maintenance windows, a primary and a secondary maintenance window. That allows the agents, if they're up and running, the opportune time, or the appropriate time to update itself on one of those two schedules. And it takes roughly, it's got about roughly a 2-hour window to get that done. So you effectively say, hey, I want to do this, say, on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Just make sure your VMs are running for 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And with Nerdio, you can schedule that to turn everything on and then shut everything down afterwards. So that's a great addition.
So, Greg, are these, again, is this for the master image or is this for persistent images or both?
Well, the RDP agent doesn't necessarily live in an image. Okay. So you'll take your image and you'll deploy that. And as that's deployed, one of the last steps in joining the virtual machine to your AVD environment is to install and register that agent.
Right.
So you don't, because it's got a specific token association, you don't install it until the very last minute. So it's really on the persistent, I guess maybe you could say persistent desktops or, the deployed VMs.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Is it still a situation where Microsoft has this coming out in public preview, but it's still not as capable as what Nerdio does, or does this replace what Nerdio did?
This gives Nerdio additional capability, right? So Nerdio was never able to effectively define the time frame for the agent to update, but we always saw it updating when they got added to the host pool. So this enhances kind of our stopgap measure, where we don't have to do the stopgap measure anymore, providing a faster deployment, and then we can just rely on the maintenance scheduled window that you define, and in which, by the way, you can set both of those actually within Nerdio as well.
Yeah. And I think that's good for our listeners, right? And I know I've kind of harped on a little bit, but as Microsoft continues to evolve, it only means more additional capabilities for partners like Nerdio to turn around and solve real world challenges that we don't even know we don't know yet.
It's a good way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah. Mo, any experience with this particular topic, and have a comment on why this matters?
I know why it matters, but I was always wondering that why this feature is not available and why Microsoft is not thinking about it. Because this is one thing that if we talk about our Citrix days, this has to be one of the most important feature. So I'm glad to see that finally it has been added.
Yeah.
I understand the importance, and I feel that it was a high time that they added this feature.
It provides a lot more predictability of your host VM availability for the users, right? Because if there's not a user on it, it may just decide to update it, and now it's not an available VM until after that update is completed. So it's a very positive addition, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one here is RDP short path for public networks now in public preview. I feel like I should know what this is, but I'm drawing a blank. Greg, what is RDP short path, and why does this matter?
So there's RDP short path for public, and there's RDP short path for private. It's effectively utilizing UDP to an extent within a wrapper to bypass the AVD infrastructure on video.
Oh, got it.
Is the way I understand it. So it will help speed up any of those video lags that you have. And they previously had it for private networks, and now they've added that same feature from public internet traffic.
Okay. And that just goes back to, one of the challenges for Microsoft is all the management components that they're playing catch up on, but investing in, and then people like Nerdio are continuing to make improvements on. And then there's the user experience stuff that, the older RDP didn't have in it. Now that they're again in it to win it, they want to make sure that user experience stuff. And this is just another example where they're investing in making that user experience, both from a routing and a protocol specific world, on par with the other presentation protocols out there.
I would expect to see more coming from an RDP perspective in the future, just because you have much better performance, in all honesty, from the Citrix client. On that perspective. So I look forward to seeing, future additions or changes to RDP moving forward for those reasons as well.
And I would highlight that Microsoft is, they're okay with you using other third-party stuff to make it work. They want those Azure workloads, but at the same time, they want to make it where your total cost of ownership doesn't have to include large, expensive third parties, and maybe a Nerdio comes in for the management layer, but then Microsoft is good enough for that user experience. But they know that user experience is that, and security are paramount things that have to be handled.
Very, very much. They're big picture. Microsoft's a big picture kind of organization from a feature perspective. And you're right. They're not going to be end all, beat all for everyone. They'll have a nice set of features for the mass majority of customers, and then it leaves room for partners like Nerdio, XenTegra, and others to come out with additional enhancements to those capabilities.
I mean, think about it this way, Greg. There's a percentage of people that we interact with, people that listen to this podcast, that remember Steve Ballmer in the old Microsoft days of we're going to beat everybody at everything. And then there's a whole new generation that have no idea that Microsoft used to be the 800-pound gorilla, and now they really are just this seen as partner with everyone organization. It's crazy to think about, isn't it?
It is, and it's funny you bring up Ballmer. I read an article a while back. What's funny is, like or dislike Ballmer, Ballmer is the reason there are Azure data centers.
Yeah.
He went out and before he left, was purchasing up data centers for Vision, and then Satya Nadella ran with it.
Yeah. It's not easy being king, and he was king, and he embraced being king. That's part of it, but somebody has to make tough decisions, and sometimes they work out perfectly, and sometimes they work out horribly, and sometimes they work out perfectly because the next guy comes in and sees the bigger vision. Mo, and RDP short path user experience, any comments on this one?
I'm still scratching my head thinking, what does, I know what it means, but where Microsoft is going with this, is this more on coming up with their proactive monitoring side of the business, where they are trying to see if they can build at one point monitoring or management, or this gets integrated with SCOM, those kind of world. But at the same time, I feel that this move is more to to bump up the offloading capabilities for Microsoft Teams, and I see more cons than pros on this, and maybe I need to understand more why this is done. But for me, I still feel that I see more issues with this than the benefit of this functionality that they are releasing.
Okay. Well, time will tell, right?
Yeah, especially because once you if you have this functionality, you cannot control this. This is something that that is by default, right, Craig?
That is. It's either on or off.
Yeah. And the other part is that it's available only in RDP client.
Well, and let's go to that. Okay, so guys, there's the agent, which is in the virtual machine and the host virtual machine. And then there's the client, which is the tool you use to access it. This next one talks about Azure Virtual Desktop having now a web client. I assume that means HTML5. Go ahead, sorry.
So, yeah, it's interesting that they finally brought that out. Andy, I'm not sure. I think you're aware. I used to work at Microsoft a little over a year ago for 3.5 years, and back then we knew about this URL. So the original URL for RDP over the HTML5 to WVD, AVD now, was rdweb.wvd.microsoft.com/arm/web client. And the only thing they've changed, or officially announced, I should say, because we had this last year, it's now client.wvd.microsoft.com/arm/web client. So I would not, you might see an additional update to that URL because it still has WVD in it. So they may decide to change that to AVD, but it's not here nor there. It's just a new, it's just a new URL. It doesn't really provide you any new specific features.
Do you think it wasn't ready for prime time at that point and they've fixed it and now changed the URL, or it was just something they were kind of holding back on?
Well, I think it's just a general evolution of their product, right? I mean, we started out as WVD and now it's AVD. Granted, the ARM version of WVD was out before they renamed it to ARM. So I think it's just a progression of what they're doing, but I suspect there might be at least one more change coming.
To me, it sounds more like a marketing.
It's possible.
So, yeah, you do 4 technical update and 1 marketing update. So this is more of a marketing update.
Well, and that's okay too, right? I mean, it's their choice when they want to come to market with something and make a big deal out of having something they were missing. And, if you look, we're looking at this updates thing right now. We're in April 2022. 1, 2, 3, 4 updates came out in April. If I go back to April of last year, those probably 25 came out in April. The snowball's getting bigger, but it's harder to roll. When they decide to make something publicly available or even preview, sometimes it might be the marketing guys that decide when it's going to be. Hey, that's April 2022, April 2022 AVD updates. Greg, any of those things? I'll tell you, we'll get to the end. We'll bring up Nerdio as it relates to May and April. Let's go to May 2022. Well, let me go back one time. April 2022. Anything that happened there that they didn't post here that we would want to bring up?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Okay. May 2022, background effects with Teams on Azure Virtual Desktop now generally available. I mean, that's just another user-friendly type thing that was turned off for resource savings earlier. Is that true or not?
I'm not sure. I don't, in all honesty, I don't keep up with some of the individual applications like Teams other than, from a performance perspective. I wasn't aware of that. But if it helps with performance on Teams, even more welcome.
Well, I can tell you as a group that does a lot of Citrix and VMware work, some of the features were missing in the Teams that you could do inside a virtual desktop. Those have now showed up. Backgrounds at one point you couldn't turn on. I'm not really sure the reason. I think it's performance. Mo, what do you think? Why do those things? Why do all the native things not just come from day one when you're doing Teams meetings of types in virtual desktops?
Definitely, I believe this is more of performance related. They were holding back again prior to pandemic. Teams was more LAN based. People were doing things the way they want. With pandemic now, we are into different world altogether. Everyone is using it. Teams took a while to even catch up with all the demand. So this was held back for performance related to avoid any performance challenges. And now, as we know that things have been ramped up and now people have embraced this pandemic and they understand they have their networking and other things is being updated. So this definitely is a time to release these things that they were holding back on.
Right. I tell people all the time that what we do in the world of remote protocol and presenting is we take what used to go from the graphics card or the system board or whatever to the monitor. We're now doing that over hundreds, if not thousands of miles, mouse clicks, keyboard strokes. The fact that this all millions of lines of code just to make something show up on your screen over a remote session, it's pretty amazing that any of it works, much less the optimizations that are there. Okay, next one here is multi-window and call me with Teams. I think we're going to be on a lot of Teams conversations here. Call me with Teams feature now generally available. Again, sounds like just Teams was a little neutered before, and now it's getting more of its basic features allowed.
Yeah, that's a great feature, the ability to move it from your PC to your phone or vice versa. I do that all the time. It's nice to see that feature's in there now.
Yeah. I have to do that all the time where I need even over UDP, the networks just aren't strong enough to carry a conversation, and I just hit the button, tell it to call me. Mo, and any comments on this one? Seems like a pretty basic thing that we would want to have in a virtual desktop running Teams.
Yes, definitely. I think this was a much needed feature. Teams for WebEx. Cisco had this long time ago, and this was one reason people would still stay with Cisco or WebEx Teams versus the Microsoft Teams. Now, finally, they have added this feature.
Yeah. Hey guys, I got a question for you. We talked about timing and marketing and maybe performance. How much of this do you think had to do with the ability to make features like this multi-user, multi-session, either capable or supportable?
I think it's a big piece because Zoom and everybody else has kind of beat Microsoft Teams up on some of these features. So I think it's a long time coming. I think they're just still a little behind the curve on it, but they're slowly catching up.
Yeah. I mean, we're using Zoom right now to record this webinar, and every once in a while I jump out there and I got Log Me In going on the other screen, a go-to product. And I remember how good those products were and how bad Teams was. Teams is caught up. At the same time, the necessity out of the pandemic made us all just start to love and appreciate the integration with Teams into everything else. And I think it was kind of a perfect storm of helping it come to market stronger and faster
Most
without
definitely.
nitpicking it.
Most definitely.
And if you're going to use virtual desktops, you kind of have to use Teams if you want it to be 100% supportable. The other players are always playing catch up in that world, which is more the the business cloud side of things.
Yeah, is Zoom even supported on AVD at this point?
I don't know.
I
don't know if that's well, I can't imagine Microsoft's put a lot of effort into it. And I don't know if Zoom thinks the groundswell is big enough to care at this point, but they better start thinking about it. Well, I will highlight real quick players like iGel, whether it's WebEx or Zoom or even Teams, they're offloading some of that stuff. And if it's not happening natively from AVD, they're enabling the client to work in such a way that it's offloading it on the endpoints, the user's endpoint screen, whether it's happening in the virtual desktop or not.
Right.
All right, I'm really excited to talk about this next one. It's Japan Metadata Service in public preview. Greg, what do you have to say about that?
I'd say it's about time.
Okay. Are you serious or are you joking?
No, I'm dead serious.
Awesome.
Because so what they're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, is the workspace metadata. And for the longest time, it was always a region within the U.S. A little over a year ago, they opened it up to the European market to store the metadata for your workspaces there as well. This just gives AVD additional resiliency with having metadata on that side of the planet, on Asia Pac side, with a region closer than the U.S. or Europe, to get that metadata out there.
So it's a little bit about performance and regionality, locality, and I guess to some degree, people's concerns around intellectual property. We're just talking about the metadata here, but I guess to some degree, even that counts if people are worried about their data protection laws.
It does to an extent. I mean, so the metadata that's being stored is information about the workspace, the host pools, the effectively kind of the pod that it's on. It gives routing information, and if they have to continue to come back long distances to get that means user experience is degrading a little bit. So I think it's a great addition.
So you said Europe, you said Asia Pac, and of course the US.
Yep. So it'll be Japan, US, and Europe, as far as I know right now.
Okay. Mo, and how do the Canadians feel about all this?
So within Microsoft, there is always a running joke that Microsoft does not think anyone outside of US, any feature, functionality, anything that is done and released that is done with US in mind. And then they start to advertise, market, sell, that until they realize that there are other countries in this continent, and they need their own. And the biggest thing is the service. If you are storing all the metadata in a central repository in the server in US, and someone is trying to access from other places, definitely they will see the performance hit. And I'll give you an example of one of the projects that I was delivering when I was working with Microsoft. They launched this project Mohoro, which was nothing more than remote app remote app that they released later as a remote app functionality. Product team said that we are going to have any customer who wants to bring in 100 application into Azure, we will do it for free. They had one customer in Saudi who said, okay, we will bring 100 apps to Azure. Now, Azure port is in US. They bring in application in Saudi with the backend sitting there, all their front end in US server. Think about the performance. Think about how this thing would have gone. That's the exact same thing that I can see with the Japanese metadata trying to have a part there. You have to have this local or regional based, and with Japan being a region that brings in a lot of revenue, this had to be done No question asked. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, right? But because of lots of reasons, policy, politics, but most importantly, the speed of light, this planet got really small in the last decade. But you still need data local because milliseconds matter. Did I lose you guys?
Nope.
All right, last one. FS Logics 2201 hotfix. So FS Logics is the user profile piece, container portion that Microsoft invested in, I don't know, 5 years ago now-ish, which really makes a lot of this doable, especially things like cache mode with Microsoft Outlook. Apparently there was a hotfix that came out related to the 2201, so January of this year offering. Probably not a lot to say about this, but Greg, Mo, and either one of you guys have comments on FS Logics in general or the specific hotfix?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, not really. I mean, it's nice to see after all these years of them having purchased FS Logics to come out and address some bug issues. I'm not surprised that we're not seeing any new features because I think they purchased FS Logics to do what FS Logics does. And other than maintaining it, that doesn't surprise me, but I'm glad to see they at least put out a hot fix.
Yeah, we've had many customers who would have failed using old profile technologies, or I'll call them legacy, but they still play a role. But this basic containerization for certain things is kind of a no-brainer. And I think you're right. I think Microsoft could do more with it. At the same time, maintaining what it currently does is a must for a lot of our customers in the AVD world in order to have a shot at being successful. Moen, you were going to comment as well?
No, I was going to just agree with Greg that I'm really surprised that Microsoft has not done anything other than just maintaining and keeping the product as it is and fixing the bugs. I was hoping that there are many features, enhancement update that's been submitted, that very soon they will start releasing some of those feature update. But seems like they just want to keep this going until they are ready to start updating this product.
Yeah, I mean, it would be super nice to see Microsoft come out with one of the most requested items I hear about. It would be nice to see Microsoft come out with a unified front on AVD and FS Logics to provide a true redundant, configuration with FS Logics for, either a hot or a hot cold kind of configuration, right? I mean, there's ways you can do it now, but it's not super graceful. It'd be nice to see an enhancement to have that added in moving forward. But
so, yeah. Greg, is that just for resiliency purposes? Is that why you're saying that?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, we have a lot of customers that are wanting to have, a DR location like East Coast, West Coast, right? And Nerdio can provide that through FS Logic's Cloud Cache, but we still rely upon Azure Virtual Desktop to load balance between the two sites, which ends up, you still have your profiles in one location, or you're doing, some trickery on the back side to keep them synchronized. But which Cloud Cache can do that. The only downside is it introduces a fair amount in latency because half of the users get redirected away from their home location and the other half doesn't. It'd be nice to have, a flip of the switch within FS Logics or AVD that says, hey, move these, we're replicating the storage for the profiles to this other region, and flip a switch to change the metadata and redirection and on a DR site. I don't know if they'll ever get to that point because in the conversations I've had with Microsoft and some of their upper level technologists over there is, in all honesty, it's if there is a failure from an AVD perspective, it's not a huge deal because you should just have your image and redeploy your image. That doesn't address any of the profiles, which would be nice to have included in that.
Greg, the latency you're talking about, is it only during a DR disaster moment, or is it all the time, depending on where you land at that moment and log into?
It's constant. It's every single time, right? So if you set DR up with Nerdio, we give you that option. As I said, that you're not getting anywhere else. But because Azure load balances 50% from side to side, then those users, let's say that we're going to East US, may now be going to South Central US. And so it's going to introduce a little bit of latency, not only for that user, but as well the latency in working with cloud cache, excuse me.
And Greg, that's like during login, yes, but worse when you're surfing your inbox and you're relying on Outlook cache, things that were lightning quick on a local computer running SSD with a multi-core processor now have delay, and all of a sudden you have unhappy users that don't remember the old days when that was slow, but now it's not slow local. Now all of a sudden it's slow again, and they're going to revolt on us.
Yeah, and we do have customers utilizing that configuration today. It's just not hugely popular just because of that reason.
Yeah. Quick question on that. If you use different technology like the NetApp that you can buy within Azure, can you solve that problem yourself?
I'm thinking about that. You can from a much better perspective, yes. Mm-hmm. So with Azure NetApp files, you can replicate your profiles, right? And as long as you have your profiles replicated and your original master image, which, you can put it on the same volume as a backup and have it replicated to the other side with Azure NetApp files. The downside to Azure NetApp files is, unfortunately, for most customers, is a cost.
Yeah. Yeah, and spending money on something that's been solved like profiles is hard to justify that net new spin on an old problem that's been fixed already.
Right.
Hey, Mo, and I think we've covered that one. So guys, I think that's it for what we have got for April and May of 2022. Greg, tell us what Nerdio's done in that same time period as it relates to these things, or any other big announcements that you guys have done that kind of takes it to the next level.
Yeah, so we've got a few updates. So our latest primary release was done 3 or 4 weeks ago. Version 4.1.1 brings in complete support from a Nerdio perspective for Azure Stack HCI.
Okay, I want to ask about that one.
All right, so do a
Stack HCI.
Andy, real quick, just do a Google search for Nerdio release notes.
I'm trying to use Bing. We're on a Microsoft podcast.
Yeah, Google works better.
Oh, I just hit the wrong thing. This work?
No, let's do it. Just click on the release notes right below it.
I got you. Okay.
See, right up in the center, it says release notes.
Got it. There you go.
And release notes one more time. Gotcha. There we go.
All right. So first, tell listeners what Azure Stack is, what Azure Stack HCI is, and then talk about what this brings to that story.
So Azure Stack HCI is effectively Azure in a box on your local infrastructure. Okay, so you can have an Azure rack with external storage at your local facility. Think of it think of it as an oil rig, right? So if you're out on an oil rig and you need some of these compute processing capabilities, doing that over a satellite connection is not that great. So with Azure Stack HCI, you can have that Azure infrastructure and operating system of Azure locally. And so outside of that, you still have a contractual obligation to Microsoft for, effectively the Azure OS, right? But you can purchase your own hardware and manage it that way.
And Greg, how do you pay for, so you purchase your own hardware, you contractually agree to tie it into Microsoft Azure. How do you pay for the Microsoft piece of that? Is it per core? What's the story?
I'm not real sure exactly what it is. I know it's a version of what they currently have at a reduced rate.
Yeah, Mo, and I know you and Trevor, I think, have been working on a deal. Or maybe you're not involved in it, but what is how do you pay for Azure Stack?
I am not involved, and I at this time I don't know much on how do we pay for it.
So I think I was involved in conversations with Lenovo on this topic. I think it's per core. I think you pay X amount of hundreds of dollars per core in order to do this, and I'm not sure if there's an additional fee on top of that or not. I think that's how it goes. I'll find out for the next conversation, and I may even call the guy right now while we're having this conversation. But okay, so Greg, Azure Stack HCI is basically taking that Azure Stack concept and specifically supporting it for hyper-converged infrastructure for AVD and therefore Nerdio. Is that what happened?
Well, it includes AVD support. So Azure Stack's been around for a while. It just now started to support AVD. And so therefore we've added it to our product set.
And before it did things like databases and maybe other things, and now it specifically does virtual desktops, which is one of those top tier workloads that it needs to be local sometimes. Like you were saying on the oil rig, it's okay to phone back across a satellite if you have to, but you'd much rather hit a local one if it was up and running.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Azure Stack doesn't support all of the capabilities of Azure, but the vast majority of them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like based on this, you guys have brought that into your product, and the ability to deploy and manage if Azure Stack HCI is in the mix it's just a matter of hitting the site now, right?
Yeah, it's just the HCI stack is just another region within Azure that you as a customer would see. Others wouldn't, but you would.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And the next thing,
Azure API limit booster. What does that mean?
so that's that's going to be a super helpful feature within Nerdio. So for those larger customers that have a fair amount of virtual machines or a lot of auto scaling going on or a lot of anything going on in the environment, Azure has a limit of roughly 12,000 API calls an hour. And because we do everything via Graph API, you can imagine on a 400, 500, 600 VM environment, you could run out pretty quick of API calls. So what Nerdio has done is added the ability to have more than one enterprise application. And so we increase your API limit exponentially. Every time you add a enterprise app, you add another 12,000 an hour. So for those, and so what we do is we round robin through those enterprise apps, registered apps, to increase the overall API call capability.
Hey, Greg, we got a problem. I'm looking through here at this README. We're going to run out of time. I'll tell you what I'd like to do.
Well, I can hit some of these. Some of these are just going to be pretty small. Some of them are going to be, bigger.
Well,
I think those.
Let's don't do that. Let's add another session for next week, and it'll be like it'll be all about Nerdio. We'll cover every single one of these.
All right.
Yes, I don't want to skip any of this. This is really good stuff. This is This is stuff that's going to make AVD more viable. And well, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Tons of stuff on this, but it goes over multiple versions. There's
Oh,
yeah.
We're just talking 4.1.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so let's hit the next one then. And I don't want to diminish what you guys are doing because there's a whole page of, there must be 300 updates or close to that on this page. But the next one, these are all in 4.1, right? So next one is Azure Dedicated Host.
Right. So you've had the ability to dedicate specific hosts within Azure for quite some time. Now we're just adding that capability. If you wanted, a little more security and have it run on a specific virtual machine, we support the dedicated host option now as well. Next is our last user login time. It's just a informative note within the host pools indicating, when the last time a user had logged in. The next one is the AVD agent schedule updates. We've already talked about that a little bit. So AVD now supports 2 maintenance windows, and we've included that capability within our product, so you can set it and integrate it with your standard process that you have with Nerdio. Excluding
that's a metric that this world of virtual desktop computing has had for a long time, and knowing that information around the last user is paramount. Got to have it.
Oh yes. The next one is going to be excluding host from autoscale on a manual start and stop. It's just new feature capability to limit the autoscale from shutting down a virtual machine. So you can utilize that in conjunction with the scheduled updates as well. And then additionally, excluding multiple hosts from autoscale. So all of that kind of plays in together so that you can bring up the VM, exclude it from autoscale to match your RDP update window and get that taken care of efficiently as possible. Next option is Azure Files default share level permissions. This is an interesting one. This is not one that very, very many people even know about doing. And it's not one that you typically would do to begin with. However, when you have these customers with commercial and government tenants in Azure, your identities live in one of the tenants. So as an example, if you're looking to do a split configuration, your identities live in commercial, but you want to deploy resources in government, we can certainly do that. But it poses a new question or a new issue as to how do you authenticate users from one tenant onto an SMB share in another tenant? Technically, you can't do that because those users aren't replicated over. So this gives us an option to effectively add share level contributor or elevated owner or even reader as an authenticated user rather than a full AD authentication, meaning that user is authenticated when they come into AVD. And with that option, that's all you need to get access to that storage, or at least mount that storage, right? So that's just share level access. Then you have additional controls below the share level with NTFS permissions, right? So we were having to do this manually for the last number of years. Now we can do it automated.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, I noticed you're skipping over some of the ones that were part of the Microsoft updates that you guys have included enhancements. I think you covered those along the way. You've got 4 or 5 more on here. I brought Trevor Mansell in. Trevor is director of our managed services and hosting practice. He's the one that was working with Azure Stack HCI. Trevor, welcome to the podcast.
Surprise.
We were talking about Azure Stack HCI a little while ago, and we weren't sure how you pay for it. I knew you had been talking to people about it. How does a customer pay for Azure Stack HCI under the program?
Yeah, so it's been through a few different revisions, and it used to be a lot more complicated. But I just recently was going through an opportunity and kind of got an update on it, and it's been simplified greatly. So essentially, all you have to do is you have a subscription that you license each physical core that you have. It's like $10 a core, something like that
Per month?
per month, and that's it. It's that simple. And pretty, fairly affordable.
So
compared to other options.
So what's the catch? Is this simply a world where Microsoft's trying to enable a pathway into Azure cloud? And so they're making it very cost effective and justifiable to do Azure on-prem?
I think so. I think it's just it's an on-ramp. And I think if they would have done that, made it easier earlier, I think it would have probably created a lot more business for them earlier. But
now, quick question for you: are you still limited to the Microsoft partners for the Azure Stack hardware, like Lenovo, HP, Dell?
I believe they're they have to be certified. So
I can't imagine a world where Microsoft would turn their back on those guys and tell them that you could just go pick up whatever you wanted. I think that's kind of a bonus or benefit they're going to make sure they keep in play for those guys. I have to assume. You guys might disagree.
Yeah, so the reason I asked that question is for a lot of customers that I've talked to over the years, that the cost of purchasing that equipment can be fairly expensive. So that also kind of reduces the popularity of it to an extent. It's really meant for those customers that will fully see the value of having it on premise.
Yeah, I mean, like just the customer that we were working with, I mean, they're kind of a situation where their end goal was Azure. I mean, that's where they wanted to eventually be, but they had some applications that required them to be on-prem for some period of time. So they were really comparing it against like a Nutanix, a 3-node Nutanix cluster, or that could be a VMware cluster as well. And I think if you look at it, if you compare those two options,
it's cheaper.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there's always some way to do it cheaper, but
right.
Talking about like enterprise, at least close to enterprise, level stuff.
Yep.
Well, Trevor, thanks for joining and jumping in and answering that question. Greg, you got a whole list of things here. Was there anything else that was something that you really wanted to bring up on the Nerdio side that you guys have brought forward with 4.1?
No, I think we've covered the major things that are super big for 4.1. The last couple of things are some customizations on the interface and highlighting fixed failed host. Nothing super major, just some additional convenience options.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you jumping on as always, once a month and doing this, or once a month or so, and talking about what Microsoft's up to, and then throwing in additionally what Nerdio is up to. Moen, did you have any additional questions or comments around these topics, or for Greg specifically?
No, this is great. I think one thing that Nerdio is doing really great to make AVD shine. That's what I would say. AVD is good, but Nerdio is making it shine. And I think one thing that XenTegra, Nerdio, and AVD we can do is build some kind of plugin for ServiceNow. I know ServiceNow released Microsoft Remote PC that can be discovered on ServiceNow. But I feel that there is much more that we can do to add more value on true digital adoption. And ServiceNow is the angle that if we add to this is going to take it to a next level.
I would agree with the wholeheartedly, Moen. I've had several dozen customers request some better integration with ServiceNow for that very reason.
So probably not a topic we need to go into a lot of detail here. If you're listening, reach out to us because that is where we're going as a company, finding our partners and where they can help their customers solve challenges and then integrate with ServiceNow. But Greg, as soon as we stop the recording, we're going to talk about that. That's awesome.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate you jumping on, and we'll do it again next month. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.